Good morning, I'm Katie Nan.
I'm Tony Yuen.
Welcome to today's broadcast.
Today we will be taking a closer look at the Korean War.
Beginning in 1950,
This
the
is
Korean
in
War.
breaking news. The after effects of World War II has led to a rise in communist propaganda. Be
Wait,
sure.
what about the Korean War?
You mean the Forgotten War?
What? Why was it the Forgotten War?
Well, prior to the Korean War, World War II had just ended, which overshadowed the significance of it, coupled with the fact that it was never really a war, more of a police action.
So, what exactly was the significance of the war?
The Korean War, which lasted from 1950 to 1953, was significant during the Cold War because it marked the beginning of U.S. military engagement in the Cold War and further developed the nuclear arms race. Now, let's take a look at major events of the Korean War.
Korea was under Japanese rule until the Japanese were defeated in World War II. Following the end of that war, Korea was divided into two nations, one controlled by Soviet Union troops and the other controlled by U.S. troops. The United States supported a pro-Western government, while the Soviet Union supported a communist government, leading to the divide of the Korean peninsula along the 38th parallel.
Correct. And after the Soviets and Americans left Korea in 1949, the North Korean government became tempted to invade South due to their relative weakness and desire to reunite the divided country. This temptation grew when the American government indirectly stated that South Korea was not within its defense perimeter.
That's right, Tony. The Soviets supported the invasion while the Truman administration responded immediately, asking the United Nations to intervene. On June 30th, 1950, United States troops were ordered to fight in Korea without any formal declaration of war. This made the so-called war a police action. President Truman then appointed General Douglas MacArthur to command the UN operations.
You may be wondering how the war progressed. Well, in the beginning of the war, South Korea appeared to have the advantage, with the capital of North Korea, Pyongyang, falling to MacArthur's forces. However, the communist Chinese government grew concerned by the proximity of the American forces and intervened. 8 divisions of the Chinese army outnumbered the American army, causing them to retreat repeatedly. For a second time, communist forces captured the South Korea capital of Seoul.
By January of 1951, United Nations forces had captured Seoul back and began to push back the communist troops. At this point, the war had entered a stalemate.
So, why didn't the U.S. use any nuclear weapons or bombs to end the war?
While General MacArthur believed the U.S. should attack China directly, whether it be through an invasion or the use of nuclear weapons, Truman wanted it to be a limited war to prevent the possibility of a World War III or a counterattack by the Soviets, since they had already developed their nuclear bomb as well.
So what exactly would that mean for the war?
A limited war is a war that is fought with the restriction of weapons, or particularly the avoidance of nuclear weapons.
In other words, Truman supported a non-nuclear war, whereas MacArthur did not, which is why MacArthur was relieved of his command.
Yes, so the majority of the public was in support of MacArthur's perspective, and were upset at this decision, not supporting the stalemate.
As the stalemate continued, millions died, along with many more displaced or injured. Along with that, the prolonged gridlock between the two forces damaged Korea's infrastructure. Cities that were targeted, for example, Seoul, the capital of South Korea, were destroyed with only few buildings left standing. Now, Katie, could you explain some of the lasting effects of the Korean War?
The end to this war, which was a ceasefire, never fully resolved any of the problems in Korea. Today, North and South Korea remain divided with lasting tensions between the two countries. We can view how this war intensified the Cold War between the United States and the Soviets due to the rivalry between communism and capitalism. The Korean War was the first major war that demonstrated the possible consequences that the rivalry might bring about. Due to this, the NSC 68 was accepted, essentially solidifying the documents of the US's commitment to containing and preventing communism. Now, let's take a look at how it would change America's role in the Cold War.
The adoption of the NSC 68 papers contributed to the U.S. being more involved in international conflicts and expanding their military forces. For example, establishing military bases in South Korea. In addition, this war also established China as a global threat due to their success in pushing UN forces. So, China and the Soviet Union now held influence over North Korea, pressuring it to adopt communism, while the U.S. backed South Korea, turning it into a democratic capitalist nation.
In addition, the heavy focus on military advancement also propelled the idea of the nuclear arms race, one of the key features of the Cold War. Furthermore, the Korean War contributed to the formation of SEATO, or the Southeast Asia Treaty Organization. which highlighted the need for a regional defense organization to prevent the spread of communism in Southeast Asia. As we look back, we are able to understand that the Cold War was that the Korean War was one of importance that set many of the foundations of the US's role in the Cold War, and is a war that should not be overshadowed by the events prior to it.
Well, that's it for today.
Thank you for tuning into today's broadcast.